Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. So today I'm doing another one of my bikini verses. So I've done figure, I've done women's physique, I've done another bikini competitor, but I haven't done wellness yet. So Nikki here is a pro wellness competitor, and she just competed last week, and that's why she's so tan.
Orange, let's be real.
But the cool thing about you is you've actually been a bikini competitor yourself, so you have like a little bit of experience with both divisions, which I think is kind of unique. So I first want to ask you about that. So what was it whenever you were competing as a bikini competitor made you decide to compete then in wellness?
So when I first started competing, I knew I wasn't built for the bikini division. Like, I was athletic growing up, I played soccer, I played lacrosse, but I was definitely a bottom heavy kind of person. So I really just knew that bikini wasn't my thing. So getting into competing, it was more about just like learning the lifestyle, learning how to meal prep, learning to see if I can do those habits. Once I competed and I realized I was for sure definitely not bikini, I kind of just sampled, the waters, went up to figure for one show, did that, wasn't my thing. And then when wellness was announced, it was like a perfect fit. So here we are.
Yeah, so I want to touch base on what you just said. You were naturally kind of bottom heavy. So in wellness, it's the only division that the symmetry rule doesn't apply because you're supposed to be a little bit thicker on the bottom than the top, versus in bikini and all other divisions, you have to be pretty much top to bottom symmetry, everything matches. So tell me a little bit about that. So that
Definitely.
became much easier for you training as a wellness competitor.
Exactly. And again, from the sprinting background, from lacrosse, I did winter track to stay in shape for soccer and lacrosse. With those fast twitch muscle fibers, gymnasts, a lot of ex-dancers are kind of that wellness category because we just keep our muscle mass in our bottom half, and it just makes it easier for us to look more shapely, look more proportionate in our world. The upper body is a little bit bigger than bikini, but I would think like the bell bottoms, like how pants kind of fold out at the bottom, like that is wellness. That's where bottom heavy. So upper body is really like that bikini. Like density, you're not super dense. You really shouldn't be super jacked. You have bigger shoulders than bikini, but they're not striated by any means. But it's still definitely a little bit smaller than your lower half, which your legs and your glutes take up most of your body.
Right. Okay. So the conditioning itself, though, is quite similar to bikini, from what I understand of it. Is this correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you're not really supposed to be leaner than bikini, but knowing that you guys have more muscle, sometimes it can appear that you're leaner just because that muscle kind of projects out. So anytime somebody could have the same amount of conditioning as me, for example, but maybe they have more muscle, so they have more projection, which gives the appearance of more conditioning or a lower percentage of body fat. But in reality, it's probably just because you have more muscles.
Exactly.
So.
And to your point on that, like when I cut down for a peak week, for example, like I lose about 7 or 8 pounds in the last 10 days because that is the level of conditioning that's required. Me, if I have muscle and then I have a little bit of fat, that does not translate on stage very well. So I have to be very, very depleted when I go on stage. Otherwise, it doesn't give a really good look. So it just piggybacks on what you just said really well.
Absolutely. So let's go into the physical stats. So you just competed, so I'm pretty sure you're aware of what your stage weight is and your measurements. So what is your stage ready weight and measurements?
So for this particular show, I started prep at 167 and I ended up on show day at 150. So it was about 17 pounds down. And then my waist was at 27 inches, which is what about mine looks like and where it stands. My posing is what gives the illusion that I have such a smaller waist, but it's not. It's 27 inches. And then my glutes were a whopping 40, 40 inches on stage.
That's a bit. That's a booty.
Yeah, that's a booty.
Okay, so you didn't really track how your measurements went down as much as you did your weight.
Correct.
Okay.
So I do weekly measurements as far as like my tape measure measurements because for me, I know what the difference is of losing fat versus muscle. And that's a really good barometer for me personally to know if I'm doing too much cardio, right? Like that's a really, that's why there's such a drastic like last 10 days for me because I'm trying to hold as much muscle as I possibly can to the end versus burning it off and just over cardioing. So it's definitely a finite kind of planning. I definitely feel that wellness programming for my athletes is a little bit more intensive than bikini. Not saying it's difficult.
Right.
It's just more intensive because I have to be so aware of the muscle mass and maintaining that.
Exactly. So your height is what?
I am 5'6".
5'6" and your stage weight was?
150.
150. So just as a comparison, I'm 5'5.5 inches. So we're
That's
about
the same.
We're about the same. I go on stage at about 123. And let's see, my measurements I wrote down on stage day. If it's a good if it's a good stage day, it's the 22.5 waist, and the hips would be 34.5-ish. So this varies, obviously. Sometimes I can't get down that much, or sometimes it's a little thicker. So it all depends. And then in the off season, honestly, I don't track my measurements as much, but you know, the waist is bound to go up by an inch or so. The hips go up by maybe an inch as well. And I don't really get past, I want to say like a 128 in the off season. So I say rather close. You know, I think in bikini it's more doable, but you know, we're all kind of different. Some people like to, you know, live their best lives in off season. I like to stay.
Not me. I like to keep it in.
Yes, I like just to, you know, stay more close to a stage look, because let's be honest, sometimes I want to jump into shows, and I like to compete a lot. So
and when you can, you should. Really,
yeah,
like
exactly.
that's the point of the sport. Like you want to, like you're such a great ambassador for the sport. Like you really, off season isn't an off season. It's a time to get better at our craft. So if you're taking off season to be worse or derailed, you're not ever coming back better.
Exactly.
So I align with you on that philosophy 110%.
Heck
so.
yeah, that's what's up. So how many shows do you do a year? Roughly?
Roughly, I've probably done about 3 or 4 on average a year.
Okay.
Again, with wellness, it's just a lot different. You know, peaking for a show, if I were to drop, you know, 7 or 8 pounds with consecutive peak weeks back to back, that's going to take a toll on my body.
Oh,
so,
yes.
you know, I generally do, if I'm going to do shows back to back, they're about 2 or 3 weeks apart, maybe at 4, or I'll just wait and do like 2 back to back, take 8 to 10 weeks, then come back and do 2 or 3. But, you know, it's all about strategy and planning what works best.
Exactly. And I think, too, it's something to be noted is in wellness, there isn't as many opportunities yet as there is bikini shows. Bikini shows, they happen every weekend. In fact, there's one show, I believe, coming up this year. There's 6 pro bikini shows the same weekend. In different countries, everything. Yeah.
It's crazy. Oh my God.
So you can find a bikini show anywhere, whereas wellness, they're a little more sporadic. So that's another thing to note as well. Okay, so differences in posing. There are, I would say, from what it looks like off the bat, and I want you to elaborate on this, is it does look kind of like a bikini routine, your individual. However, it's way more flamboyant.
Yes.
It's way more, wow, show, look at me, look at me.
It is, it's very sassy.
A lot more arm movements and big arm movements, whereas in bikini it's a little more subtle.
Yes.
But they're both, I guess, you know, similar, but you know,
jazz hands.
Little jazz hands, bigger movements, more dramatic movements.
Yes.
And then also in the comparisons, you guys do quarter turns, whereas in bikini, that's not a thing.
Yes, so I'll start with the quarter turns, 'cause that just makes it easier. In bikini, you have your front pose. In wellness, that is actually our side pose. So when any bikini competitor is showcasing their right glute to the judge or their left glute to the judge in their front pose, that is essentially our left and right quarter turns. We have a different front pose, and our back pose is pretty much the same. Now, when it comes down to the back pose, we want to make sure in bikini we're essentially trying to hide the quadriceps. We're not trying to enunciate those. Whereas in wellness, that's what we're really trying to highlight, because we want to see that separation from glutes and hamstrings and quads. So that's the biggest difference in posing. Our individual routine, similar to bikini, we have to showcase, you know, a front, back, and generally a side pose. There is no set standard where you say you have to do X, Y, and Z. But again, the more well-versed you are in your posing, the better it's going to look on stage, the more, you know, athletic you're going to look. But when it comes to the hands, I will say this. That is not a preferred thing. Like, don't do it. Honestly, like, your hands should not come above your elbows. So if you're one of these people, bring it in. Just bring it in a little bit. Your physique is doing the talking. Your hands don't need to do it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I did notice that about you, though. I will say I saw your routine, and it is a little less. It's a little more toned down than some of the others I've seen, which I think it looks better. But you know, I'm a little biased because it's closer to bikini posing. But you know, it does get quite dramatic out there.
Totally, and you have to think about your posing routine, whether it's bikini or wellness. Like, you're telling a story. Your physique is the story. Your hands are the accessory. Your hands are like the cover of the book, right? You're not going to just showcase the cover of the book. You want the inside of the book, which is your physique on stage, to tell that story. So let your body do the talking. Your hands are just an add-on.
Absolutely. So going into the next topic here, let's go into exactly what the judges are looking for between bikini and wellness, and there are differences. So we did touch on it a little bit already. You just kind of did. But in bikini, like I mentioned, it is a more symmetrical division. I think in bikini, they're mostly looking for, I guess, putting emphasis on that X frame. The glutes, of course, you can't be a bikini competitor without glutes. Goes for wellness too.
True.
But they're not really looking at our quads as much. Of course, they want them to be symmetrical, but not overpowering. And in wellness, it's definitely a highlight of the physique. And in bikini, they want, little shoulder caps, nothing too big, and a very, very small waistline. So I think that's like the biggest differences between just thinking off the bat. And what do you have to add on to that?
Definitely, to your point, obviously both bikini and wellness have a very small waist. Bikini, it looks a little bit more accentuated. She said X-frame. Again, it's not some lat spread from a men's bodybuilder per se, but there is a little bit more degree of inward indentation, if you will, when it comes down to the physique. Same thing with wellness. When it comes to the back pose, I will say the biggest difference there is, our glutes are really kind of the focal point of that backside, and that's a really, what they look for is that biggest separation between the glutes and the hamstrings. Not striations by any means, but definitely just a separation. And glute med, the whole shape of the glute is full, round, high and tight, and that's really kind of a standard across the board for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about diet and exercise. Now, I don't want you to get into your full routine or anything, but generally, what is your calories when you're prepping for a show versus off-season calories?
Prepping for a show, I'm not a big eater per se. And what I mean by that is, it's not that I'm not hungry. My body does a lot with a little bit of food. So that is just something that my body does over time, and every client is different. So this is not a one size fits all by any means.
Right.
But I generally do anywhere between 5 and 6 meals, whether it's on season or off season. The macro count just varies a little bit. Obviously, when I'm prepping, my protein is up a little bit higher than usual. It's somewhere upwards like 180 grams to 200 grams per day, rather than my improvement season or my off season or taking some time off is kind of closer to 120 or 140 grams. Again, that kind of varies because I'm at a point where I don't need a ton more muscle. And again, I prefer to eat a lot more greens and just kind of keep my protein at a tolerable level. But for me in wellness and a lot of my wellness athletes, a lot of carb manipulation, that's going to be huge for pre and post workout. Nutrient timing is huge with wellness because we really have that short window of opportunity after our workouts and our cardio. So yeah, that's kind of a little snapshot into my world.
So you mentioned protein, but how about overall calorie amount? Do you track it or no?
I do track calories, but I really shoot for macros. So let's go about 180 to 200 grams of protein. I'll go anywhere between 200 and 300 grams of carbs as I'm kind of ramping up into an improvement season. They get pretty low for me during the on season, so they'll be somewhere around 100 grams, like when I'm really pushing towards the end. And then fats, I keep that super minimum. I don't really respond well to fats. My husband responds really well to fats, so his diet's like, the nuts and the avocados, and I'm the fruit person. But
okay, nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, in bikini, I'm kind of like, I track more of like calories than actual macros. I'm not that precise. Of course, I just follow what Adam gives me, but like I don't pay attention like this amount, this many proteins. I just like, okay, see it. But usually I would say like on average, if I'm in season, about 1,500 calories versus off season, it might be more like 1,800. So not a huge fluctuation there. But again, in bikini, we don't have to have that same amount of muscle mass as you guys. So, I think like I've definitely got improvements to make, but nothing like massive or major.
Exactly.
And, the muscle in bikini is very minimal in comparison to wellness, especially like in the legs or the lower body in particular.
And from a calorie count, you said 15 to 18. For me, it's about 1,800 to about 2,200. That's kind of my range too. So I don't personally go up a ton. And even with my clients that have to put on more size, you can do it without just shoving macros down their throat. It's a really like a slow and steady process. So
yes, yeah, and I'm a big advocate too. Like if I'm not hungry, I'm not going to eat. Like I'm never going to force feed myself either. So I kind of just like listen to my body as well in some aspect of it. But of course, like if I'm getting close to showing I'm too lean, then that rule goes out the window and I have to eat regardless. But there are times I'm not a big foodie either, and I'm pretty content with my food in season and off season. So it doesn't take a lot to like make me feel satisfied. So I'm just like, this is great.
I'm gonna get shrimp instead of chicken. Whoa, like that, living on the edge, really.
Yes. So now let's talk a little bit about training here, and I'll give you an example of my training. So let's say I am prepping for a show. I don't even want to give out the cardio amount because that is so different depending on where I am in prep and if I'm doing a show after, if I'm in the middle of season. So you guys know I compete a lot, so I might be doing a show to show to show scenario. And sometimes even in between the shows, I might do like 1 or 2 sessions per week if I'm already there and I'm maintaining, right? So it's kind of unfair for me to give you my rough estimate of cardio when it's always different. But I will say with training, I will, lower body gets like 2 days per week. One of them is more of a glute focused, lower body. Shoulders, I got to hit twice a week because that's like my weak spot. Back once a week, a bicep, tricep once a week, roughly. So sometimes I'll even add on like them together depending, if I need more on something and I'm getting close to a show, and maybe I've missed a few days of training due to travel. So that varies too, but I do try to, hit all the muscle groups, but it's something to note that the shoulders get 2 days a week and the lower body gets 2 days a week. How about for you?
So for wellness, regardless, and to your point, my splits kind of vary depending on what I need to improve and what phase I'm in. But generally, 4 of my days are lower body days, and then 2 of them are upper. I've had improvement seasons where I'm not kidding you, I didn't touch upper body for like 6 months because ratios, and my upper body grows super fast. And again, and this is a general rule of thumb for you guys out there that are training super hard in the gym and you're overtraining your upper body, which I see all these new wellness competitors doing. The bigger your upper body is, the smaller your lower body is going to look. So as a good rule of thumb, make sure your legs, make sure your glutes are the #1 priority because that's the focus. That's the main attraction of the show. So generally within those 4 lower body days, it's 2 leg days and then 2 glute isolation or glute focus days, glute tie-in day. So,
okay, wow, that's a big difference, I would say. Like we're bikini trying to create symmetry, and I've even been told by judges before, like my lower body was a little bigger than my upper, and that's why I always have to work and evening it out. So something to note. But is there anything else you'd like to share or think our audience should know for the difference between wellness and bikini?
I think we covered everything, but at the end of the day, it's just about working hard regardless of what division you're in and making sure that you bring your best in whatever category that is.
Absolutely. I love your energy. Wow.
Thank you.
You must have some good post-show carbs.
Definitely.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you, Nikki, for being a part of this video and letting us all know what's up between the differences in wellness and bikini. Because I feel like when wellness first came out, everyone thought it was just like
fat bikini.
Bikini or like bikini that like maybe you have like a little bit more muscle down there. No. There's a big difference, and you can tell by looking at competitors. Like, oh no, that person's bikini. Oh no, that one's wellness. So there definitely is a big difference once you take a look. So thank you guys all so much. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. And we'll see you next time. Bye.